Yo, what up? It is currently the 11th of August, 2024. It's currently 8:36 p.m. on a Sunday, and this is a bonus episode post-commentary that I'm doing for the creation of my new path tiles. So I started with a regular cobblestone tile, as you can see on that shirt, and what I wanted to do was add borders to it. Just to make it look a little bit better and ingrained into the ground a little bit better. So yeah, this process took me a little bit, but I just wanted to go over it and I guess also explain how to do it. It's not too complicated of a process. Obviously I'm starting from a base here, but the process is much of the same for making the original tile. So starting out here, I decided to just do the left edge. So I just used the square tool that the game has and made a square going in. I think I went in around 8 when doing this. If you want to make an edge for something, it's good to distinguish the colors a little bit. So here I'm using a much darker gray compared to the regular stones. I end up actually making that gray even darker later on because I wanted to use shading and I couldn't because these two grays that I'm using right now are only one shade apart. But yeah, coloring that in. So now in terms of segmenting this stone, this process involves a little bit of math. So the Animal Crossing design tiles are 32 by 32 pixels big. So if you want to divide something up, one of the easiest ways is 8 by 4. So here, there's 4 of these square bricks that I'm making here. And each one of them is 8 tiles. So from counting the top line down to the space right above the next line, that's 8 pixels. And then here I'm bordering them off by just adding in a little indent. That kind of makes it look more like, it's a bunch of stones being laid on top. And it makes it look a little bit better. And I guess here I'm just double checking that I've gotten the numbers right because I'm prone to losing my attention and messing that up when doing stuff like this. And here I'm adding lighting. So these stone designs already have lighting on them, so I'm just following that. Obviously, making sure your lighting is consistent will make the design look better when put around your town. If you make the lighting look weird, it can just make it look, it's basic coloration, rules. And here I'm lightening up the lighting a little bit. So as you can clearly see, this border, is very noticeable compared to the regular stone tile. And so this process basically gets repeated for all of the edges, corners, and inner corners. It's the hardest is making the first, obviously, and then you just have to replicate it across. And once you figure out how to easily replicate it, it's pretty easy. So here I'm just making sure this looks good, so I can, continue using the design.
I didn't mean to put it on my umbrella.
And I accidentally put it on my umbrella instead of on the ground. Putting tiles in the ground is not very fun. You have to manually go into the menu every time. When placing tiles, and I'll get into this later, Animal Crossing can be very weird. But yeah, I'm just, looking over the way the tiles look.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna work with that.
So making sure you're confident with what you made is pretty important because, if you end up making the whole thing, you can always, redesign it, but if you're following one design and using that to inform the way, the rest of the designs look, having that initial design look good is pretty important, I would say.
I don't know what color that one is.
And now here I was kind of struggling with colors. For this particular design,
space.
You know, we're working with grays.
count.
So it's pretty difficult to pass the colors. What I did here was go back through my footage and actually take a photo of the first design so that I could have it on my computer and look at it as reference. I would say that's pretty important because doing it by memory, you're prone to messing it up a little bit. Hence why I was getting these colors wrong, because I had to remember them, and I'm not very good at doing that. Something important to remember is the way that the tiles will connect with each other. Because the bottom edge will end up connecting to the top edge,
Yeah.
you've basically got to act
So,
like the bottom edge
1,
and the
2,
top
3,
edge
4,
are right
5,
next to
6,
each other when
7,
making
8.
the design. So here,
1,
when
2,
placing
3,
these
4,
lines,
5,
it's
6,
tempting to
7,
put a
8.
line on across the bottom. But if you do that, then it'll be a double line for that particular area because there's already a line at the top. So you leave an
I don't know
empty
what
line
color
at the
this is.
bottom.
Is it this one?
And you can sort of already see that concept in the base tile design, where it's got some stones that are cut off halfway, but they're actually, you know, being completed at the top. Because the tiles will all end up connecting with each other, there shouldn't be any situations where they get cut off like that, except my previous one where there weren't borders.
Oh, I think it's short one. And it's here, so 1, 2,
And here
3,
I'm
4, 5, 6,
second
7, 8.
guessing everything because I
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
can't
6,
tell
7,
just
8.
by
It's the
looking
same
at it.
width. Why does it look
Not the same width.
And this is something I encountered, you know, camera angles and various other things can make pixels look wider or thinner than they actually are. Even looking at this footage, it kind of looks like the very right column of pixels is slightly wider than the rest of them, and I was noticing that throughout the whole process. It's probably just like an optical, weird, like, I was going to say optical illusion, I guess something like that. The grid function is pretty helpful, but in my case I wasn't using it too often because
keeping track of the colors that
the
I'm using.
white is a bit difficult. It's a
Wait,
bit
if I
difficult to
could
see all the
do
grays.
This.
So here I'm employing a tactic. So usually when you're working with any sort of like design thing with colors, you'll get the full spectrum of colors. But this Animal Crossing uses palettes, and you've only got 16 of them. But the colors of each palette correspond to a specific ordering, and because everything is in a linear order, it means that, say, a blue on one palette might be a green on another. And this can make the contrast a lot easier. As you can see, mine, the colors blend in very well. But on this one, which was the one I ended up using to differentiate the colors, you've got oranges, blues, greens, yellows. Basically, everything stands out from the other color. Because that particular palette doesn't really have a gradient of colors, it just has a bunch of different colors. So doing something like that is very helpful for figuring out what colors you need to do just by looking at it. It's really easy once you do that. You know, obviously when you're making the actual design, most of the colors will blend in with each other, because that's, you know, that's just kind of how, like, you know, shading and lighting is going to end up looking. So, you know, making it look really contrasted is a good idea. The only problem with doing it like this is every time you want to change something about your design, you have to pay 350 bells and go into the design and manually change it and go through the whole saving process again. It takes like maybe 30 seconds, but, you know, that kind of adds up when you're dealing with so many designs. But I'd say you save a lot more time, you know, trying to eyeball whatever colors you're trying to use. And another effect that it has is, well, here you can see the right edge and left edge. It's very clear the difference that I made, the mistake that I made in the colors, because now they're way different. So the way Animal Crossing works in this regard is that they update the designs like basically in real time. As soon as you change the design, every instance of that tile will change to reflect your changed design. So as you can see here, the once, regular looking tiles that I placed out here earlier now look, well, like this, and it doesn't look very good, does it? But something that's kind of neat about that is that you can place just like you can place tiles everywhere, and they look, you can make them look horrendously ugly, like this kind of does, and then go into Able Sisters, change the design to make it look how you want, and go outside, and all of the designs will be updated, which you can do to make a very satisfying looking reveal, which is what I ended up actually doing here. So when I'm placing the tiles everywhere, it's going to look like I'm placing a bunch of, colorful nonsense. But then there's going to be a little final reveal, and it's going to look, well, it ends up looking pretty cool in my opinion. And so yeah, here I'm just filling in all of these squares. It's really not a complex process, as I've repeatedly stated. And once you start getting it, you really can like speed up a little bit. Assuming you're not constantly, checking over what you've done like I am. But, now it's put in the lighting, and then putting in the shading, and then that's it for the edges after this one. And then I move on to the corners here. Oh, actually no. I think first I might go and place all of these tiles. I think that's what I did first. Yeah, I'm not full on the order of events here. So this entire thing, my footage comes up to, it says 3 hours, around 3.5 hours, and I was basically recording everything I did. So yeah, it does not take too long to do something like this. For me, it even lasted a little longer, because not only did I have to place all of the tiles, I actually had to remove all of the old ones. So that probably added at least, not too much time, I guess, maybe like 10 minutes. Yeah, and your town layout might be, more or less inviting to this concept. I think generally, the way the acres are designed, will work pretty well with this. I guess main tips for mapping out a town are the signposts, which, if you're unfamiliar, the signposts are all the positions that the houses can appear in. So unlike New Leaf and New Horizons, the houses in this game can't just show up anywhere. They show up where the signs show up. So, if you're having people moving in and out, then you don't want their houses to not be connected to the path system, ideally at least. So making sure that your paths go by, or go to all of the houses is important. And I mean, I'd say the main reason for this, obviously, it's a nice, it looks nice. It's very visually appealing once you've done it. Yeah, but beyond it just being visually appealing once you do it, it's one of the bigger things about it is being able to freely sprint around in your town without having to worry about disturbing your flowers. Because my Mateo is, I tend to it every day. So
why does that matter?
No. I tend to the flowers every day, so there's a ton of flowers
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
everywhere, and I don't want to run over them.
4,
So having those
6,
paths
7,
is a really good way to, safely be able to
1, 2,
run
3, 4, 5,
without
6,
having to
7,
worry
8,
about, running over flowers and
1,
potentially,
2, 3,
breaking
4,
them and
5,
stuff.
6.
Okay, so here I am outside, and I believe I'm about to start replacing all of these paths. So I did this in a bit of a weird order. I made the edge tiles, and then I started replacing edges, and then I made the corner tiles, and then I started replacing some of the corners, and then, yeah, I kind of did it like that. The order really doesn't matter. I think ideally, look, because the thing is, like I was talking about earlier, you can't have all of the tile designs on one character. You have to split it between two, which means no matter what, you're going to be doing some switching around, having to go into one character and then exiting out of the game and then going in as another. So, there's no getting around that, really. So, you might want to do it so that one character has all of the edge tiles or all of the corner tiles. So then at the very least you can kind of do it like that. What ended up happening with mine is because Knife has the center tile, it meant she didn't have an even amount left. So she has all 4 of the edge tiles, but she has 3 of the outer corners, which means that Scoop, who ended up picking up the slack, had 1 of the outer corners and then the 4 inner corners. It's a bit disorganized. So I had to leave, when I was placing in the corners with Knife, I had to leave the bottom left corner tile until I had done it with Scoop. And now I'll introduce you to the thrilling process of placing down all the tiles. You go into the menu, you go into the design menu, you drag you drag the tile over onto the floor option, then you exit out and you walk over to the next spot and you do it over and over again. Very repetitive process. I would do a time lapse, but it wouldn't look good even remotely because I'm constantly going into the menu. It would look really bad. And so you can see I'm using the stylus here. It's ideal really in this situation because you can quickly drag it as opposed to having to use the button controls every time. I kind of switch between them throughout this because it's a bit tiring, especially how I'm holding it because I'm recording it at the same time. But yeah, I definitely recommend the dragging method, especially for because something that kind of adds up is the
Oh, come on.
so here as you can see, I left a bit of a mess.
Oh, man, I didn't mean to pick that one up.
Yeah, that happens too. So for some reason, the game, when you place down a tile, it's checking the area around you, the same way that dropping an item works.
Didn't exactly want to twirl my hand or whatever.
You have basically the 3x3 space from the tile you're standing on and all of the tiles surrounding it are where a tile could potentially go. It's going to prioritize the one that's, well, you would think at least it's going to prioritize the one that's closest to you. But sometimes it doesn't really make sense the way it goes. Sometimes you'd think, okay, I'll just, from this point that I'm standing, I can just place one more and then it will work. And then sometimes it just goes in a completely different spot that you wouldn't expect.
I guess I need to make, inward corners.
Yeah, so I actually didn't go in planning to make inner corners. Jesus. And when I say an inner corner, I'm basically saying, here in an intersection, right? You can see there's a gap, right, with the edges coming in, and then there's a little square that should be there, but it's not, and that requires a whole new, design, and 4 of them because 4 corners. So that adds a bit. The inner corners end up being probably the easiest type because it's literally just adding a single square into each of the 4 corners. But it still adds something. And I don't know if you could get away with not doing inner corners. Yeah, generally I think it'd be a good idea. And I mean, if you're gonna do the outer corners and the edges, you might as well, go all in and do the rest of it. I don't know. I think at this point I was a bit intimidated and I was about to start taking a break. It looks like I'm already taking a break because I'm not doing anything here. Now I believe here I'm making an altercation to the way the path works. There's this weird drop-off, you can see it, where to the right it's going up, and then to the left it's going down 1. If you see that, I ended up making that fully straight, which I think looks a lot better. Yeah, there's a couple of awkward spots. Even still, after the finished product, I think there's still a couple of spots that are awkward. I think I did the best I could. Mateo, in particular, has the issue of diagonal bridges, which are impossible to work with because, you're placing down squares, perfect squares onto the ground, and no matter what arrangement you do for perfect squares, it's never going to look good with a diagonal. Yeah, it's never going to look good with a diagonal.
So I just
mean-
sort of have to have paths
Oh, you can,
leading
like,
into the bridges.
Wait.
Oh yeah, I'm also placing paths behind the Nook shop. You can barely see them at all. If there was like a dig spot, I don't know if they put them that close to buildings like that, but if there was, you wouldn't be able to see it really. It's basically impossible even to see a full tile there, let alone something smaller like a weed or something like that. But as I was saying, yeah, diagonal bridges are very difficult. You can actually place design tiles on bridges, but that does not really help in this case. So if you have diagonal bridges, then yeah, like what I did was sort of just have the path end off, and then you go under the bridge, and then it continues. And that's really the best you can do. There's not really a better solution than that. You know, ideally, your town's going to be pretty interconnected from this system. You might want to try to go for something natural, like not doing too much of it. There are places in the town where I've just sort of not put tiles because I want to have that natural space left over. In particular, the walk on the bottom left side of town, there's like a little walkway that goes down to the beach. There's no tiles there in my town because I think it's better to keep it as a natural little walkway. And, you know, as you can see, me placing all of these down, it looks pretty ugly because all of these tiles have the wrong color palette. The reason why I hadn't changed it by this point is honestly because I wanted the reveal to look good. Because, you know, might as well add some flair to it. And also, actually, I did think it helped because it helps me better identify immediately which tiles I've still yet to replace. And where, yeah, you know, where I need to get a corner in or an inner corner and stuff like that. And I might just skip ahead a little bit at this point. So I think here I'm just finishing up the left side of town. Obviously excluding the corners, which I eventually will get to here. I think I've got some live commentary here.
Alright, so I think that's everything on this side. Other than the corners, so I need to make corner pieces. I need to make inner corners. So like in this situation, you need a little block in the corner to link the bottom and the side. And I also need to make like L-shaped corners. So for something like, let's see, what would be an example of that?
I don't know if there is an example of that over here. I mean, I don't know. Do I have to...
Like ending off the path, I want to use corners, so it'll be like,
it's pretty
you know,
self-explanatory,
to the right
dude.
and then down. So the path will be enclosed on itself. But yeah, that's the left side done other than that. And then I guess I'll get started on the right side, which is a lot bigger, so this will take a lot longer in comparison.
This is a very long haul process. I end up saying so in the in this at some point, commentating live that you know, I did this in one day, but really, if you play this game for only a little bit at a time, it still doesn't take too long. I'd say give yourself maybe a day for designing out, a day maybe for planning out where the paths go, and then a day for actually putting them down. It'll probably not feel that monotonous, maybe. If you want to knock it out in a single day, no one's going to stop you or anything.
So, I don't know what I'm thinking here. Would it be better if I raised up the path so that it goes all the way along here, which means this bottom row of the rainbow garden here wouldn't exist anymore. And so the top line, it cuts through this tree, like this tree is gone, and this tree as well, all the way to the edge here. And then this row is the bottom half of the path, and then that brushes above this rock, so then this part here doesn't exist, because this part's like really weird and kind of awkward. I think I'm gonna do that, and I guess if it looks bad, then I'll change it back.
Yeah, so this was one of the bigger changes that I ended up making. Cutting off the bottom of the rainbow garden.
That will mean the rainbow garden is slightly worse.
Yeah, cutting
I
off...
don't know. I think it'll look fine. Like, if I just... Look, this is what the rainbow garden would look like. Imagine the flowers aren't wilted. Like, that's... And Hugh won't be here, and I won't be here. Yeah, that looks fine, though. And it's squarer. I think this little bottom bit doesn't... It kind of doesn't really make sense.
But yes, you know, lowering the rainbow garden. This... From when I first put down the cobblestone path and I did that around that rock, it always bothered me. I always thought it looks kind of weird. And yeah, so I'm glad that I ended up changing this, even though it meant, yes, having to cut off the bottom of the rainbow garden a bit. Yeah, rocks are a tricky thing, because you never want a path to a rock, really. You know, you want a path to the houses and the buildings. The rocks are just part of the town, and there's something you just have to get around. There's no breaking rocks like in New Leaf. Oh well, New Leaf has a like suspicious rock. I guess it still has the pre-done rock placements. New Horizons though let you basically put the rocks wherever you wanted. In a way, you can sort of like force them to go into specific places. So rocks end up being an obstacle rather than a. You can use them to your advantage depending on the placement of them, but generally, yeah, they'll be getting in the way more than anything. And another thing that, and this will probably disturb a player, well, not disturb in a horrifying sense, but rupture your daily tasks, I guess. If you put design paths around a rock or near a rock, then those tiles can't have items drop onto them anymore. Which means for the money rock, which is a daily rock that has bells inside of it when you hit it with a shovel, that rock, if it has design paths around it, won't be able to put bells on those tiles. And the way the money rock works is if those tiles are filled up, it just doesn't spawn any more bells. Once the 8 surrounding tiles from the money rock are filled, it won't spawn any more bells. So, and this is particular for starting out players, because I personally, I don't go for the money rock, when I play, because it's too much of a hassle. Digging up the spots, there's usually flowers nearby too, I don't want to dig up flowers, and it's a good amount of bells. It's still a good thing to do early on, so you might want to hold off on doing this, or maybe trying to have those 8 tiles around your rock be free so that you can still get the money rock. You also need to make enough spots around that you can dig holes, though, to ground yourself while you're hitting the money rock. Yeah, so rocks are a bigger obstacle than just the single tile they take up. They're also an obstacle.
Alright. I'm going to keep these flowers, particularly the purple pansy and the blue pansy, because those are hard to get. But the white pansy and the white tulip don't matter as much. But I'll just plant them along here for now, and then I'll find a better place for them at some point. Luckily, none of them were wilted, because then I'd just have to get rid of them for this move.
Yeah, cutting off the rainbow garden by 1 I don't think was that bad. All of the colors are still represented here. And it always did have that weird corner thing that was set that way because of this awkward pathing to begin with.
So here, I'm thinking I'm going to move this path 1 to the right, which will mean getting rid of this tree, which is on the money tree trees. But what I'm going to do, I think, is just make this tree into one of the money trees instead. And then, yeah, cut it up, and then it'll go straight up, and then it can go straight up all the way up here to the town hall, instead of, like, this sort of awkward thing it does where it, like, moves around.
Yes, the major change to this section of the town was having the path that goes right above my house be moved 1 to the right, and so it's a straight shot all the way from just above my house all the way to the town hall. Whereas before it makes this kind of weird... There's this weird intersection with diagonals and stuff, and it looks kind of awkward, and it was kind of the best I could do. But you know, here working with the borders and the corners, you can't really just like place them diagonally at all, really. I mean, you could if you kept using the corners. But you know, yeah, I think making it as straight as possible,
dragonfly.
is, you know, ideal for this type of tile that I'm using here. So this is me finishing up placing all of the straight along paths. Don't worry, this is the longest part, of course. You're more than likely going to have way more straight along paths than corners. I don't know a possibility where you'd have more corners than straightaways. But yeah, just placing the last of them, it looks like.
Of course.
And here
Of
I am.
course.
I was about to say at this point I've perfected the process, but now I'm still, you know, running into that happening. And occasionally double tapping the R button and accidentally going into my fish menu. And the villages were getting in my way quite a lot during this as well. I guess they tend to do that. Obviously villages aren't going to end up walking along these paths. They do in New Horizons, which is a good addition. So, you know, occasionally you might see them walking along them. It's only by coincidence. They don't pay attention to that. It's a very...
Right, that should be every tile? Is it all done over here? Yes, so every tile in town now, besides the corners, has been converted to the bordered tile style.
whole town of
So now what I'm gonna do
colored mess.
is make the corner tiles, and then place those down. And then once I've done that, I'm gonna change the palette on all of these designs, and I'm gonna get the ultimate reveal.
Seeing the actual design with the greys is a bit jarring when you've looked at this for so long. It starts to gain a kind of appeal almost. It's a bit mesmerizing. Granted, I don't think it looks good, of course. There are a couple palettes in there that I thought actually looked decent with this. And some ideas that I got. Like, one of them looked like brown, some brown tiling with like moss from the shading, and I thought that looked interesting. So that's, yeah, stuff you could do. I still have extra tile designs left over, like some slots, so I could do something like this again and just add some little extra tiles for certain places. You know, maybe I might do that for like flower beds or something like that. I think I finally gotten it here. So this is where I ran into some difficulty with the numbers because, I guess to put it simply, the way I had been setting up the lines along the edges couldn't be done properly when dealing with the corners, because the corner piece ends up being positioned wrong for one side.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And you can see that line ends up lining up for the 8. So that's correct. The top edge, on the other hand, that not the first line along the left edge, but the second line there is positioned incorrectly. So it should be that one to the right. And this is me figuring that out now. And I spent a lot of time deliberating over this. And like I said earlier, I don't think it ended up mattering. 1 pixel misalignments are not going to impact a design too much, unless it's in a particularly bad direction, I guess. Yeah, so I use the undo tool a lot when I mess up, obviously. The thing with the undo in this game is that it's it's
Okay, that looks pretty
a
alright
one
to me.
action undo. You undo
Other than
the last action, and then if you press the button again, it just redoes that action. You can't undo any more than one time. It doesn't have any memory, which can be very annoying. If you make a big mistake, it's probably better off to just start over.
Left up corner.
It
Oh,
depends what you're doing, really. Sometimes it's recoverable by just manually replacing all of the pixels that you mistakenly colored in. Making sure you have those references so you can restore stuff properly is pretty vital in that regard. So here I am back in town. I've cut in a little bit into this process of just placing down the corners everywhere. So because I have only 3 of the 4 outer corners, I can't do instances where it's a left down corner, I guess. I'm just putting it in all the other available places. Yeah, so like here, ending off the path, basically.
doesn't make any sense.
And it placed in a weird position. So there, as you can see, it rounds off the path, it cuts it off. That little jutting out bit, I guess, to describe it that way, is a little bit weird.
Bottom left corner.
I did it like that because when running across the bridge diagonally, you sort of end up on a weird part of that path, because it would just end
I
off
feel like it should just be
at that
this,
intersecting
this
corner.
guy.
So I added that jutting up a bit to sort of ease you into the path a little bit, I guess. It's a bit difficult for me to describe. And it looks a little bit odd, I'll admit, but I don't know. Like I said, diagonal bridges suck. You just have to work around them. My second town that I have has, I think, all horizontal or cardinal bridges. Either fully horizontal or fully vertical. I wish I had that. It would be so much nicer. But, you know, I'm going to deal with it. And I think I deal well with what I've got. That being said, I don't, I like my town layout of Mateo. I think it's a nice town. I don't know. I guess I'm pretty, I'm pretty, like, easy to please in that regard. I don't know. I watch people play New Horizons, and they're like, oh, reset their island, and they'll spend ages trying to find the ideal island, which is kind of insane for that game because, you know, the only thing that's set in stone is like the resident services building location and the river mouths, I think, and everything else you can change. But yeah, people still reset a ton for that. And you know, I've talked extensively about New Horizons at this point. I think that game captured the wrong audience for what
H.
Animal Crossing is like. By the way. Yeah, and so all of the you can be very creative in New Horizons, but I think Animal Crossing inherently is not designed to be very creative
Okay.
in places other than really like, just like, you know, furnishing a house basically. And that's kind of clear in this regard as well. It's pretty tedious to put down all these tiles, and it's hard to imagine them specifically designing this system in mind. Very shocked there for some reason.
Okay, I think that's the last of it. So all of the tiles that look normal are either supposed to be normal, are going to be inner corners, or are going to be the outer bottom left corner. So, I'll just do one final check around, and then I'll hand it over to Scoop to do the last bits, and then I'll switch back to Knife for the ultimate reveal.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't think it's a flaw of the game that this process is so not convoluted. It's simple, but it's very tedious. It's not very enjoyable. I don't necessarily blame the game, but I think it's a sticking point. It's something that the series just doesn't do very well. It's very tedious to do anything creative because it's a tile-based game. It makes you manually walk to every tile to do something. Even in New Horizons, where they let you pave the paths, you still have to walk onto each individual path, pave it, walk onto the next, pave it, rather than just like drawing it. And you could argue that's part of the experience, I guess. But yeah, it is tedious. It's a good opportunity to just put something on in the background and, not have to pay attention to the game. But, I don't know. If I
Oh
was...
yeah, I need to make sure Scoop has money.
If I was making making a game like this, I probably would handle it differently. And yes, I am going to give Scoop money. Oh, and I was testing that running to see if that path ends up being, well, it's kind of weird still. But yeah, actually, money was a bit of a problem at some point, but I think I cut it out.
Missed a bit.
Because every time you edit a design, which is every time you go into the pixel editing menu, that costs 350 bells, and that doesn't sound like much, and it's not, but it adds up a lot, especially for characters that I don't use who don't have any money. But yeah, now we're going to be cutting ahead a little bit to Scoop's appearance. I might just keep this current recording going because I think the cut is coming up right about now.
No, I don't want a display. I want it.
Yeah, I guess at this point I was getting a little bit impatient. Although, I don't know, sometimes I can't tell. I feel like I get impatient really quickly sometimes. Animal Crossing does love to shove a lot of dialogue in your face, and sometimes you just don't have the energy for it, especially when you're doing something like this over and over again. Kind of reminds me of Earthbound, if you've ever played Earthbound. In most RPGs, if you want to buy something, you'd be able to select the quantity of things you want to buy. In Earthbound, you have to buy things one by one, and read through the dialogue every time. You don't have to read it, of course. Yeah, and you wouldn't. You would just mash through it. But yeah, it's been annoying.
Alright.
Nintendo do like to, they make the dialogue nice and cute, and it's nice and cool. Except when you're doing something like this, where you just want to get it done. They kind of have a, my way or the highway philosophy, where if you're not in the mood, it's kind of just too bad, So here's the first of the inner corners, and
top left corner. So this should be...
still requires a little bit of counting.
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And that's basically all of the inner corner. Once I've detailed it. Do I end up taking out that little corner? Oh. Oh, I'm checking to see what it looks like. I think there I'm realizing that I didn't take the corner out. It does look a little bit odd, doesn't it? It might just be the way the phone's recording it. There we go. Took that little chip out the corner. So yeah, at this point, I probably could have just been saving them in the correct palette. I still wanted to do that reveal kind of thing, but it's kind of pointless at this point. That's not an essential part of the process, but like I said, it's a good idea for, having the colors stand out more. Just make sure you're using...
5, 6, 7.
What you should do is make the design one time with the intentional colors, then change the color palette, and then you'll know what colors, correspond. Yeah, I'm inclined towards a sort of cobblestoney design. I think it works well because squares are easy to work with when you're working with pixels. I do recall at some point trying to do an arched design, and I couldn't pull it off, but I'm sure such a thing is possible to make look good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
When I say an arch, I mean like imagine a cobblestone tiling, but each of the tiles in itself is like an arch. Not that the tile itself is shaped like an arch. That wouldn't make any sense. But here, look, I'm going so quickly. Probably going to make a mistake because of how fast I'm going, even. No? Oh, maybe I was wrong. But now if I do make a mistake, I was wrong twice. Oh. Man, look at how quick that was.
It's a nice and easy process.
It is a nice and easy process, I agree. This is a thing where I kind of like that I have this crappy kind of footage here in this series. It's not a choice though, deliberately, because I don't have any way of capturing directly from a DS. For this video, I kind of would have liked to have that direct capture. Don't have it though. Capture cards are very difficult for portable devices.
We're at the final one.
Because you have to have the system dedicatedly designed with it, rather than just a simple streaming capture.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8,
If the DS had an option similar to the Game Boy player or the Super Game Boy, it'd be golden. But unfortunately, that doesn't exist. I feel like the Wii U should have had something like that. It did have this game actually was on the Wii U Virtual Console. Emulating DS games, I thought, was very it's just like, where do the bottom and top screens go? It's a very unique system in that regard. Alright, I've cut in a little bit here, and yeah, it's basically just what you're seeing now is, you know, putting in the inner corners in the right places.
Man, they're back.
Yeah, so having the ones I have to replace be the proper colors makes them stand out a lot more. So I think it is good to have that frame of reference there. But that's only for the case of replacing the tiles, of course. So if you're placing them for the first time, there'll just be nothing there, which is also a good enough contrast.
Wait, that was the complete wrong one.
Also, I got a little bit confused sometimes about which ones go where. Yep, these are the final things that I had to place. So sick of it at this point, of course. And I picked up a path that Scoop doesn't have access to, so I have to switch to Knife to replace that. Of course, I had to switch back to her eventually anyway to get the pallets done correctly, but yeah, that's always annoying. Sometimes I do that in Wildcast episodes, and I have to find a window of opportunity to bring Knife out for her to replace that, because, you know, it doesn't happen very often. I don't usually go out of my way to play as Knife unless a special visitor shows up. And nowadays, the only special visitor who every character really goes out to see is Gracie, I think, and she doesn't show up very often. Hopefully I won't have to get these tiles replaced too often. Yeah, I kind of wish the pickup button wasn't the same as the run button in this game. They changed that in... I think it's in New Leaf they ended up changing that, and then it follows through to New Horizons, which, I'll admit, when I go back to New Horizons, it messes me up a lot. Yes, but I think at this point I was done. And then... do I do this? Yes, I decided to display all of the tiles, the palette of tiles, so to speak. Yeah, so this will be a good view as to what exactly this process entails, what the what you're working with is. And also you can get some nice little symmetrical patterns by doing this. You get a nice look at something. Maybe I should do. Maybe I should revert the color palettes back and have it be like looking like this. It's definitely growing on me. Of course, it's very garish, and that's probably the best word I could use to describe it.
Oh yeah.
Messed up that. A Wendell design was what that was, but I accidentally overwrote it when I was making knives designs, unfortunately. It's just a Mario brick block. It's not too hard to just recreate myself, so I might do that at some point. I guess we'll have to see. So here I'm just checking to make sure I've replaced all of the tiles in the town. Yeah. It depends on how you distribute your path designs, but for me, I don't use knife or scoop very often, so the act of having them go into place down one tile is a bit of a, annoying thing to have to do. So, here, now I'm going back in, and I'm going to switch up the palettes back to the proper colors.
Alright, so now we're gonna change the palettes on all of the designs. Then we're gonna switch to knife and do the same.
Yeah, basically what I said, but slightly worse.
Looking for number 14.
As you can see, some of those palettes looked half decent. But yes, the 14, that's the one I ended up using. And yeah, at this point I was so checked out, I was just like, having to go in and press this 14 times for every design. But I think it ended up being, well, obviously it ended up being worth it. It saves us having to look at that monstrosity of blues and greens. Yeah, I think the game could have like a palette of path designs wherein you make a left edge, right edge, and it stores all of those collectively. So if you wanted to edit something, you could edit them all at once. Not simultaneously, but you don't have to open up all of these designs one by one individually. Obviously for this game, very primitive, 2005, like, I get it. But yeah, it's the sort of thing that would save a lot of time. And of course, once I've done this with the knife, with the scoop, I have to do it even more times with the knife. I'll probably just cut to the last of doing these with knife, and then we'll get to see the grand reveal finally. And here we are, changing up the designs. I might skip ahead a little bit more because there's nothing to this process other than pressing a button 14 times. Alright, I believe we're coming up to the very last of them. Might have live me take over. Maybe not. Let's see, is this the last one? And you can see this looks a lot better. Like I said, you have to get used to, you have to trust the process. And finally.
Alright, that's it. Now for the big reveal.
The big reveal.
You're gonna go outside and see it in the proper colors.
Oh. Look at that.
Look at this.
Look at this.
Does that not look so nice? I just love having those nice corners. Oh, it looks so nice. I already really liked the original stone tile design, and so the addition of the borders on everything makes it look really nice, in my opinion. I think it really, yeah, it makes it look really nice. And I think it just reads a bit better. And I think it even makes the actual design pop more because you've got the contrast of the dark and bright colors. There's still a couple things to work out.
Not much to add to that, I don't think.
Yeah, no, this I think looks really nice. And I think the reveal in the Wildcast episode is going to be pretty cool. Looking all around.
So yes, obviously this process
Yeah.
is worth it. It does look really nice. I'm already really glad that I went through with this, and I'm gonna be looking back on those old episodes and being like, man, that looks so bad in comparison.
So, to give a final look at everything I worked with here, let me just put away my umbrella. We have the 4 edge tiles. So we have a tile for every border block here. We have just a standard tile with no borders that I'm standing on right now. We have 4 inner corners, and these show up when there's a turn at an intersection. So you have one for each of the 4 corners. And then you have 4 outer corners, and this happens whenever there's a turn. And these also have 4, of course. So yeah, it's it's a bit of a process, especially in my case where I had to replace all of the parts, but you can get it done. This was all done over the course of one day for me, so it's pretty easy to get done if you slow burn it and you take your time with it. You could probably get this done over the course of maybe 3 or so days. Pee-wee. Look you. Pee-wee's wearing the design as well, which is pretty cool. But yeah. Next time this will be seen is in Wildcast, which is going to
So yep, that's going to wrap it up for this post commentary. I know it's very long, but yeah. I think this process ended up, it ended up turning out very well, and hopefully this is useful if you want to try something similar. And hopefully not all of the commentary was completely useless.